Week 2 has come to a close, and now it's time for Reverse Sweep's Power Rankings. We had some big movers last week that caused some consternation with fans, and well, there are a lot of movers this week. I'm your host, Katie Bedford, joined by Enable and Pacman. And really quick, guys, before we unveil our new Power Rankings, give me a really quick spicy hot take from each of you on what's happened. Ian, you go first.
Yeah, I'll go first, of course, so John can't take my answer. I think my hot take, Katie, is I think Minnesota is a championship team. I think that they have a really good chance at not only moving up the rankings going into the major, but I think that they could be a top 2 team in the game. And the reasons why, real quick, are they look like they've improved all around with Standy, especially their main issue with pacing. And besides FaZe, which is unbeatable, they've shown that they kind of have Dallas's number. So I don't really know if there's a team that will be intimidated by or they have a clear disadvantage against besides FaZe. So I think they have a great shot of being a top 2 team moving forward.
That's certainly spicy. That's a good hot take. Pacman, what do you got?
I think that, hear me out, Seattle is going to be in the winners final at the next major. That's all I'm going to say. Where they finish?
Garbage hot take.
Seattle's going to be in the winners final. That's all I got for you.
That's all he's got, but that's a hell of a hot take. Ian doesn't agree with it, but maybe some of the results from week 2 give Pacman's prediction some weight. Let's go through those really quick. Teams like OpTic, well, you didn't win a map, much less a series, 0-2. Dallas falling to Minnesota, as did OpTic, so a huge showing out of Minnesota. Seattle continuing to look improved in their series as well. Atlanta, well, did exactly what you'd expect. They beat everyone, still undefeated. But let's see how these results are playing out in our standings. Take a look at that. Seattle Surge. Pacman just said, winners final. That's where you're going to see them. And they're at the top of Group B over Dallas Empire, with Florida Mutineers in 3rd and OpTic all the way at the bottom. They're in 5th. Group A. New York now sitting in 2nd with London Royal Ravens, that team that, hadn't won a series, in 3rd place now as we get ready for the upcoming major. So some crazy things, they have happened, and that means some crazy things are happening for our power rankings too. Let's pull those up and see how they have changed. Well, congratulations to Guerrillas, gentlemen, because, you were ass, and now you're really ass. So let's start with 12th place. Guerrillas, you moved them on down. There's some other big movers we'll get to in a little bit, but Pacman, Guerrillas, congratulations. You're the worst team in the league.
I mean, they just keep losing, and so you're at the bottom. You need to do something as an organization. Make a move, pick up some amateur players, challenger players, and make things shake. Like, try something new. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but it's not working already, so there's nowhere else to go but up from here.
I agree. I mean, we've talked about this. Their potential is capped compared to the other teams in the league. They just don't have enough players who I think can impact the game, actually impact it. And you've seen, they kind of had a good little run, but other teams have caught up in playing better as a team, understanding the game more. And Guerrillas haven't. They can't really improve when they don't have the talent that the other teams do. But I do think they have an opportunity to make a roster change. Not going into it too much, but I think, they could potentially get players maybe from LA Thieves. LA Thieves is going to have to work with a team that is below them in the rankings, because they need a team that sees, whether it be TJ, whether it be Kenny, whether it be Slasher, as like a superstar player. Now, I'm not saying that that's the route that LA Thieves wants to go, but I think right now Guerrillas needs to be calling up every single team in the league and trying, just begging to make a change. They need another. They need 2 players, like 1 or 2 players that could just really take over a game. And yeah, literally on their hands and knees begging.
Fair enough. I don't know if they have any trade value, but maybe they'll just buy someone out of their deal or buy them over to their team.
I think Vivid has been pretty good. I think he's the best player on their team.
He's been
solid. I think they need to catch a team that's desperate. Okay. You know what I'm saying? A team like LA Thieves that should be a contender. That is just kind of like, we just got to make a change. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, we'll take Vivid, we'll give you whoever. or whatever the case may be. But they need to do something at this point. They just have to.
We agree on that.
They just have to.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get worse than that. So please do something, anything, even, look at rookies. There's been great results across the league with other rookies coming in. But Legion and Ultra, I'm gonna bunch these two together in 10th and 11th respectively, because they both moved down 2 spots and they are both still in the bottom half of the league. So Ian, Legion and Ultra, they still suck.
I mean, it's tough, Katie, because I mean, yeah, they're still bottom half of the league. I don't know if they're as bad as the rankings show. I think it was just because other teams had such good weeks. But I feel like Toronto, I'm not really sold on them with insight. I don't know if they're going to be able to improve. That's why they're there. With Paris, though, I think they have the potential to be really good. I've been high on them. I think for them, though, Fire just isn't performing. He's not producing. I think if they were able to swap him out, and I know that sucks to say because he is a rookie, still very new into his career, but like they're one piece away from, I think, being a competitive team consistently, because they've shown flashes of it. But right now, they're just too hit or miss. They're too hit or miss against every team in the league. Yeah,
Toronto, I'd like to give them a little bit more time with inside to see what it looks like. But right now, they're more here because of what Ian said. Just other teams' movement up, and they didn't really do anything to do that, right? They beat LAJ 3-2. They didn't lose, but it wasn't anything impressive.
They only had one game.
Yeah, they only had one game this week, so tough for them on the power rankings at least. And Paris, they lost both their games, and once again, they had one of those stinkers against Seattle where Seattle just ran them over. And I want to say Seattle's playing a lot better. They're playing with confidence now. But also, Paris just didn't play well. They have those times where they just look bad, and that was one of those times again. And we talked about that too. If they look great, if they're playing well together, they look scary. And then there's also the opposite side of that coin, and that's what we got this week. They need to make a move, but like Ian said, I think it's a one-player thing, and they'll be fine. I think these teams are not in the worst spots, even though they're at the bottom.
Now, a team that is not fine and is not in a very good spot. You gotta look at Thieves in 9th place. Our second biggest mover on our rankings, and not in a good way, moving down 4 spots to number 9. Oh, I'm sorry, Ian, but I need you to kick this off for me. The boys, they're having a tough go of it right now.
They are. I mean, they're down bad, Katie. I'll be honest with you. They're down real bad. I think we couldn't put them below Toronto or Paris just because we don't really know what these teams are going to do. I mean, LA Thieves did beat Toronto in their one match that they played versus them. And that was with insight. Obviously, they still had temp. We haven't seen enough with Venom. I still think that they need a team change, but you could just tell the vibes are off. They don't look like a good team. They lost to London, which I don't even want to say it's necessarily a surprise at this point, but I think the way they lost was more shocking to me. Everyone knew that they were going to lose the FaZe, but the way they also lost the FaZe, they looked like a league play team. They legitimately look like me, Pac, you, and we can get some random scrub off the streets played FaZe. And we probably could have did about the same as they did. So they need to make a change, man. They need that core 3. Something's got to give. They need to do whatever they can to maybe bring in new talent. I don't know who they kind of want to build around on the team, but the environment is just off. And I think no matter which angle they approach it, I think all those players in Slasher, Tej, and Kenny are all still very good players. They just need to be in a different environment. They need something new. It reminds me almost of when I was a player on FaZe with Clayster attached Zuma. It was like we had times where we were really good together. We had times where we were really bad together. And then it got to a point because we were teaming for so long, it's like we just argued over everything. Mm-hmm. Even the littlest things that didn't really have any importance. And everyone just needed a breath of fresh air. And when everyone went their separate ways, we all had more success than we were as a team in the latter half of our teaming career. And I think that that's just what LA Thieves needs. I think that's what the players need.
I mean, I agree with you. I feel like they're in a spot where they're down bad, and this is like, to me, it's becoming expectation versus reality. And when I say that is, this is what they are. This is what they were last year. This is what they are this year. That's reality. Our expectations of them are just so much higher. We expect them to be great. We expect them to win. We expect them to compete with FaZe and Dallas. But that's just not the case. Those teams are better. Plain and simple, they're better. And LA Thieves in the spot where they have all these guys that have huge names, huge potential. They could all go their separate ways and become champions again. But together they don't work. And it puts them in a really tough spot because I'm sure there's salary obligations and contracts. These things are hard to move around. And now they're at a spot with an extremely expensive team that is in the bottom half at best. Like, right? At best, they're 5th, 6th level team. That's not what you want when you are putting forth that kind of cash and whatever it may be. It's really unacceptable. And the way they're losing it,
it's a lose-lose.
It makes it the worst because they're not competitive anymore. Those games this weekend were pretty embarrassing, right? Like,
they're bad.
People are leaving their seats before the game's even over. Like, they go to them. It's bad. They're in a really bad spot.
It's a difference from a team like Guerrillas, right? Where, they're most likely giving it their all. They just, they don't have the pieces to really compete at the top level. LA Thieves, on the other hand, they have the pieces, but it's not working out. And you can almost see them while they're playing these series now where they're like giving up before the series is over, like you said.
You can see it in their face.
Yeah, you could just tell. It just feels like they don't want to play together. And it's a lose-lose because not only, like John said, it's tough now with contracts and everything to be able to move these pieces around when you have players of their level. It's not something that's going to be easy. But then also with them losing consistently now, not performing up to expectations, they're hurting all of their stocks. So right. even if in their head they're like, man, I want to get off this team, I want to go to this team, I want to be traded, or like I want to move this player, you can't, because not only do the contracts come into effect, but everyone's like, are they even that good? Is the expectation versus reality, like John said, where it's like, or were they just kind of, or not, where have they kind of fallen off? Or they're not the level of players that they used to be? I'm not saying that's the case, but that's what it's looking like. And by them not really wanting to play together and giving it their all, it's just only going to hurt them. Only going to hurt all of them individually, in the long run.
I think the important thing at that point, know when to say when. Because the return on this investment for Thieves right now, not particularly worth it. That's why they are in 9th. But let's talk about 7, 8. You've got Mutineers at 7. They have not moved. Ravens moved up 2 places. They were in 10th. Now they are in 8th. Pacman, Ravens, why do you guys have them at 8? Why do you keep Florida the same?
I mean, the Ravens look good. That even in that loss to New York, they were really competitive. Paul was playing fantastic. That match against New York was really close, and New York's one of our top teams in the league. You could argue that you could even move New York up to the 2 spot if you want to. This is a top team, and the Royal Ravens looked really good. And then they gave the Thieves a beatdown, right? So if we're gonna talk crap about you when you're doing poorly, we have to give you your props when you start turning around. And I think,
game.
Yeah, exactly. And their name is hard to say. The Royal Ravens are doing that. So props to them, props to that organization, and props to Paul X for coming in and making a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean, Paul X is, it might be a little too early to say he's like transformed this team, but I just feel like watching, he's given them a second chance. Because
they're winning.
They got some series wins under the belt now. They could potentially be in winner's bracket for stage 2, the stage 2 major, but it just seems like they have more life in them, right? Before, it was almost similar to how I feel about LA Thieves right now. Is it just didn't look like they wanted to win with each other. And then bringing Paul X in, not only is he helping obvious issues on the map, when it comes to talent, getting more kills, their pacing looks a lot better, but it just seems like their confidence is back. And when you give players like Dylan, like Zed, Shawnee confidence, they can be, pretty damn good players. And that's what we're seeing here. I think it's well deserved that we move them up and we kind of praise them because we were cooking them when they didn't win a series, and it was well deserved, and it's well deserved now to give them some praise. They look good. They look good at the end of the day.
Florida, they beat OpTic 3-0, Ian, but we're keeping them at 7. Why do you think that they don't deserve to move up a little bit?
So this is tough. This is also another one of those teams that right now, I think that they could very well be higher than 7, but the other teams around them also had very good weeks. And yes, they did 3-0 OpTic. They did. But OpTic also lost 3-0 to Minnesota. And they lost way worse to Minnesota than they did Florida. Obviously, Florida was a pretty close series. Big Wake had a great series there. So it's like, even though they beat OpTic, I don't know where OpTic stands realistically. Yeah. I think we're gonna need to give it a little bit more time before I, with 100% certainty say that OpTic kind of has fallen into that middle pack of teams. So even though it was a big win, I just don't know how big of a win it was, and especially when the other teams above them, some of them have beaten Florida. It's just hard to move them up. They look good though. Like this 7th spot they don't look average. I think that they're definitely, right at the cusp of being able to be a contender for a top 4 team. I just think when you look at this middle of the pack, it's really close. And you could almost switch out a couple of these teams, with no argument. So 7th they're just kind of there for right now. We got to see the major and see how they perform.
Right. So they lost to Seattle already in this stage. So it's hard to say. And that's the only team that so they played a slumping OpTic, which is what we're going to call it for now until we know where they stand. And they beat ROKKR, but they beat the previous version of ROKKR where we could have beat the ROKKR, right? So they beat that version of the ROKKR. So
we would have took a hard point off them.
Right. So I'm not really sure but they did 3-0 them. So the last 2 matches have been 3-0s, but it was that one, and then as Ian just touched on, the OpTic match. But they're also one of those teams that's on the way up. If I was to show you like a little green bars, it would be pointing up, even though they're still at 7. They're trending upwards. That's good for them. It's just, how do we put them past the other teams? Even OpTic, because they've shown historically throughout this title that they're a better team. They just happen to have a bad week. So we can't really fairly move them up that much. And Seattle, once again, had a really easy day. It's just a hard spot to be in. But, of course, next week, as we saw this week, could change things drastically for them.
So kind of some of the similar opinions then for Surge in that 6th place spot is you had, you played well, but kind of an easier week. So you just kind of keep them where they are. Yeah, I mean, they destroyed Paris, but it's Paris, and you don't get to move up from that. But at the same time, you've instilled confidence in your team and your fans and people like me who are watching, and they look really good. What else can you do besides 3-0 them? Pierce looking nasty again, and that's scary for everyone. Everyone knows what it's like when Gunless is disgusting. So
big piece.
Big piece.
I think it's, even though there isn't much change from those teams, the gap is a lot closer. Yeah. To when we talked about it last, and we were like, yeah, these teams are, 6, 7, but there's a pretty big gap from the top 5 and them. Now, I think it could be very interchangeable. So even though there's not any movement necessarily in the rankings, they're there. There is the green bar going up. They are trending up. And if they have another good week, if they perform well at the major, those teams could easily slide into the top 5, top 4 teams in the game right now.
Well, and if they make that movement, OpTic might be the one that moves on down if the trend continues. They're the first time of our top 3, which consistently has been FaZe, Dallas, OpTic. They are the first one of those top 3 to move down, and they moved down into 5th. Pacman, OpTic, they couldn't win a map, much less a series. You have them in 5th place. Talk me through why.
So even though I said the whole historically thing, I still stick by that. And that's why they're still 5th. If we were just to base it off solely this week, they'd be much lower. So we have to put them behind the rock. Yeah. They had a really bad week. But if they can just simply turn it around, they have the talent, like Ian talked about, just crazy amounts of talent. If they do figure it out, they can turn around. But this week was horrendous. You can't go into a week and not win a map and expect not to drop somewhat. And this team, it looks like they were lacking in just basic fundamental areas. Certain players need to play better individually, true. But there were so many times when they had advantage and they were giving away rounds and situations, and that's not what you're supposed to see from the team that's supposed to be the top respawn team in the game. It just wasn't showing. You'd had individual moments from Scump where he was going off, Envoy where he was going off, but the team as a whole did not look like a cohesive unit at all. So here they are, down in 5th.
This is what I was getting cooked for. What I said is happening currently. I said, and I'm going to keep reiterating because people were cooking me. I pointed out a couple things. OpTic's S&D is their weak point, and they start these titles off hot because of their talent. They have some of the most talented players in the league on their team, but they're going to hit a point where if they don't improve their S&D, other teams are going to catch up. Even if they have, some of the most talented players in the CDL on their team, there's still a lot of talent out there. Okay, there's a lot of other teams that have talent that can compete with them, and that's what you're seeing happen. Their S&D hasn't really improved. It's not horrible, but it's not top tier by any means. And other teams have started to learn the game more and are playing better fundamentally where OpTic isn't. And so now, like John said, if you're not dominant at respawn, that's what happens. You get 3-0 by Florida, you get 3-0 by Minnesota because you don't have that safety net that you're just better, in the respawn. Oh, okay, whatever. We lost S&D, but win all the respawns. And so that's what's happening. I don't know, like John said, if it's a fundamental issue right now. I mean, it is. That is part of it. There's obviously players that didn't play too hot lately, but who knows? It's tough to say, not only for OpTic, but for all these teams with, there might be a meta change coming with the patch. But right now, I think the biggest thing is they need the XM4 back or they need a new meta. Because they didn't look good at all.
No, they didn't. Off. They did.
And it's actually, I know I'm kind of gassing the whole XM4 meta, but they just looked off as a team. Their pacing looked a little weird. Their teamwork, their decision making. So they need to. I don't want to say that they're not grinding every day. I mean, John did say that they take the first scrim off.
That's a personnel thing. I think people have trouble waking up for the first one, but they do grind.
Okay. Well,
That's such a terrible excuse. That's such a
not really, but it has worked for them. We were calling them the best respawn team in the game, and they were doing the same thing. So you can't really knock them for that. Fair. I was just saying to put that extra work in for the week so that you get it back. Yeah, put in the extra time.
I mean,
they definitely do grind.
I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not trying to improve, but maybe they need to approach it differently, approach their practice differently. Maybe watch other teams that are succeeding right now. Maybe watch some FaZe VODs and just kind of copy and paste into their own game and mold it, whatever they need to do. But they definitely need to do something, and they have all the talent in the world, so they can get out of this slump. It's not like they're just going to keep sliding down the rankings, but they need to start improving. I know it was just a bad week, but there were some serious signs of issues, I guess, that needs to be fixed relatively
ASAP.
Fast as well. Yeah.
I mean, we know they can do it, but as you guys said, the question is, will they? We'll see in week 3. But a team that had the largest jump we have ever had on the reverse sweep power rankings, moving up 8 spots in the rankings, all the way to 4th place, Minnesota ROKKR. We had them dead last. Granted, before we knew that team switch was coming in, but Pacman, Minnesota ROKKR, 4th place in our power rankings.
No, we knew that team switch was coming in. Remember this? I said.
Knew it, yeah.
We would have fired everyone at Minnesota had they not done something. That's how I feel about LAG, by the way. Do something. And Minnesota did something great. They made a great change, switching Priesthood to that AR, picking up Standy, who's been phenomenal. So I'm going to say this is a completely different team. Like this, even though it was one person, it was a role swap plus a person, and just their confidence is there. If you give me any team outside of FaZe and tell me they're playing OpTic and Dallas, I'm going to tell you they're at least losing one. I don't care who it is. Any team in the entire field, they're going to lose one if they're playing OpTic and Dallas in the same week. And they managed to come out 2-0. They played phenomenal. They absolutely, I don't even know what they did to OpTic, but they beat them down 85-point club. And then they had another great series against the second best team in the game and handled what they needed to handle, and they won. Even though they lost both hard points, they looked confident. They played better. Maybe one of the hard points wasn't as close as the other, but they were competitive in the losses, whereas before they were just getting smoked in the hard points. So this team,
I mean, the S&D map too, I think they 6-1 them or something.
Yeah.
They looked incredible.
they have the confidence as a team. That's I can't explain how important that is. You go into every series, even when you lose those maps, you like, all right, we can still do this, and they have that confidence, and it shows in their gameplay, and that's why they deserve such a huge jump. They made a great move as a team and an organization, and the players are all playing well.
Yeah, for me, I was frustrated with them for the longest time because like they were right there, even though last week we had them in 12th. Like they just needed to be able to win a hard point. You know, like they were still a solid team with Major Maniac. They just for some reason couldn't win a hard point. You know, their S&D was still very good. Their control was still pretty solid. But with this switch, making Priest of the flex and moving Standy into the starting lineup, you know, him and Attach being the sub duo, it's just it at least for the time being has fixed the main issue, and that was their pacing. Okay, now they have a lot of talent. I think Standy's bringing new life to the team, and I think they finally have like broke that threshold and now have the confidence. You know, for the reason moving up that high, I think it's simple. I think that they were relatively close to being a top team even before the switch. They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out how to make Major Maniac work. But now, even though they did lose both hard points to Dallas, they were competitive. You know, before when they were losing hard points, they were getting beat down bad. You know, and they beat OpTic in the hard. They beat OpTic 3-0, both respawns. So it's like you have to show them some love. And I think the biggest thing is they've now beaten Dallas both times 3-2. So I don't want to say that they have their number necessarily, but they might have their number. And that is big for the major and moving forward. I think ROKKR can consistently be a top team from here on out.
What's scary for Dallas is that they've won every hard point against the ROKKR.
I know.
Every single one, and they've lost both series. So let them go into an actual tournament match and win game 1 against Dallas. Dallas has to be instantly shook at that point because
in their own head.
Yeah, you're in your own head. Like, damn, they taking us in the hard points now. Like, what's good? So, I mean, that's a pretty good team to have the edge on because they're one of the best teams in the game. I'd rather have the edge on them than Paris, let's say. Like that's a pretty good team to have the edge on. You know what I mean? So
I'm gonna give. I don't care about no edge on Paris.
So that bodes well for the ROKKR and their fans, and we'll see if they can keep it together next week. Maybe this is the most day-to-day COD I've ever seen. I'm not really sure I believe in that as much as other people, but well, damn,
it could be the honeymoon. Yeah. Honeymoon period's always possible.
Where was Thieves? They don't have honeymoons.
Well,
they couldn't afford
their flights are booked. The flights are booked, solid. They can't get away.
Plane was full, but I will say from what I've watched, it did look like this was actual improvement from Minnesota ROKKR, and they look good all around. Obviously, they could still improve, but when you beat OpTic and Dallas, you know, going into this week, the number 2 and 3 teams, you gotta have a big jump. You have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree, right, that you don't accidentally beat OpTic and Dallas with a change like that. So a big improvement out of ROKKR, and you guys gave them a love, moving up to 4th. But let's talk about 1, 2, and 3. Pacman, you said some day-to-day COD maybe causing the shuffles and the power rankings under them, but it wasn't really day-to-day. FaZe is still undefeated, looks absolutely incredible. Empire still in 2nd, and Subliners, they moved up 1 to 3, but I think you could have argued potentially that 3-4 thing with OpTic beforehand. So is it kind of just same old for the top 3?
Yeah, I mean, there's a world where you can make an argument that you could move Subliners up, but they haven't had any of the high-tier quality wins yet, I don't believe. I think they beat Guerrillas and the Ravens. I mean, those are solid wins. You do what you need to do, but those aren't the top of the top. So it's hard to move them above Dallas, even though Dallas lost 3-2. Like, let them get one of those big wins under their belt, and then maybe we can talk about moving them ahead of Empire. FaZe is FaZe, right? No, I mean, if they had an OpTic week, I'd still probably have them at 1. Something must have gone wrong. Somebody's thumb must have got Ian enabled up or something. You know what I mean? Like, they had to adjust. they gotta adjust, but.
They looking like the man then.
But yeah, so these teams up at the top are just really solid, completely consistent teams. Even when Paulix was going crazy versus NYSL, they managed to pull out a win. They're a strong team, good teamwork, strong fundamentals, and they're all on the same page.
I don't know. It's like you said, you could put subliners maybe in the 2 spot. I have them at 3, or we have them at 3, obviously. But it's not even necessarily an in-game thing for me. I am worried to move them any higher with their current team because, and this might be stupid, but this you should think about this. I've heard that they've been practicing with Hydra.
Oh.
Wait.
But we talked about how that could potentially cause issues if it's not a clear decision on something.
In place of Asim?
No, I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's like everyone.
Okay.
Like a trial. Like, you know how they did it with Censor last year?
Oh, yeah, where he just sometimes plays. Anyone else could take a break, like, for a series.
I don't. Sorry, I know you guys. I don't think it's like he's in the starting lineup, but they're trying to get, because he's moved over. You know, he has been doing really well in challengers, and so they want to get him. I'm guessing, some reps. And, against the top dogs. So I don't think it's like, this player is out and we're bringing Hydra in, but I know that if I was a player, if that was in the back of my mind, now I'm in my own head. Even if they tell me, we're just doing it just so he could slowly get some reps, whatever the case may be. So I'm kind of worried about them moving forward. If that's the case, I don't know. That is over the top.
You're probably right. Because last season, when I was coaching OpTic, I remember Doug would come in for scrims randomly. So the difference now with that is none of the players were worried about Doug taking their spot. So when Doug was saying, like, when they were going to give Doug a rep, people are like, okay, yeah, take my spot for this scrim. They didn't care. They're just like, it's just an off scrim. Yeah, now it's different because Hydra could easily take, if they have a bad, like, OpTic week, Hydra could come in at any given point.
On the chopping block.
Yeah, that's completely different thing. And apparently he's playing really well. I think he won the last Challengers Cup or whatever it was.
He looked good.
Yeah, so he
has looked good.
So apparently he's a very good player. Like the talk about him was real. I wouldn't want him coming in for my spot, even if we were playing well, just because things do happen. It's Call of Duty. You are going to lose at some point. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. If I was that team, I wouldn't do that. I do understand giving him top end reps, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean it does make sense from a certain perspective, and I know that shouldn't have that much effect right now on the power rank, because that's why I think 3 is good for them. But I just feel like now, even if it's in the back of their heads, some of the players on the team might have more pressure, and that could cause making simple mistakes. And like you said, John, if they have a rough week and they bring Hydra in, who knows? Who knows if they go up, if they get way better, or maybe they get worse. We don't know. Who knows if it will even happen. But I think right now they're clear cut a top 3 team. They have been for a couple weeks now. So I just don't know if we could put them over Dallas. Definitely not FaZe.
Yeah, certainly not.
Definitely not FaZe.
No one else can do better than FaZe. Why? Because they're undefeated, and that's why they'll remain in the number 1 spot. New York, who knows? Maybe they're getting Hydra reps. Maybe it's a sign of things to come for them. But those are our power rankings. Stage 2, week 2, Guerrillas now in the bottom. The biggest movement we've ever seen. Minnesota 8 spots into 4th. And who knows? After week 3, things might change even more drastically. But you'll have to wait and see. Pacman, Enable, thank you for your rankings, and we'll see how everything changes at the end of week 3.